Thank you, David, and good morning, everyone. And I'm very pleased to thank the committee for inviting me here to talk to you a little bit about some of the experience that we've had at Dairy Farms of Canada. As David mentioned, it's been a long-standing experience in terms of partnering with for investing in research. So just to start off with who we are briefly, Dairy Farms of Canada is not a nonprofit organization that represents Canadian dairy farmers in approximately 12,500 dairy farms across Canada. And the goal is to foster the viability of Canadian dairy farmers and promote dairy products and their health benefits. And all the operations are funded completely by the dairy farmers, including any promotional activities. In terms of research investments, we have relatively, I guess, modest budget, as you can see, of about $2 million per year. That also includes administrative costs to fund research under three different programs. We have the Human Nutrition and Health Program, which I'm responsible for, and that's the one I'll be focusing more during this presentation. The Milk Production, a program geared towards research in milk production, dairy genetics and genomics. And when possible, it's the policy of DFC, or has been the policy, to try to finance research with contribution of at least 50% in matching funds through various partners. In terms of human nutrition-related research, funding, as David alluded to earlier, has been in place since the 1980s, and a formal process was established in 1990 with the creation of what we call ESAC, or the Expert Scientific Advisory Council. In 1996, a partnership was developed with NSERC to fund selected projects on a 50-50 basis. So this program consists of an annual competition that is open to all Canadian researchers. It involves two phases, a letters of intent and a full proposal phase for those that are invited. And it's a very unique program in that it was one of the first industry-based research funding programs to utilize an independent scientific peer review process by which to select independent research or investigator-led research projects from Canadian academic institutions. And we do have a peer committee that is composed of 10 to 12 members with expertise that varies from medicine, nutrition, dietetics, food science, health policy, epidemiology. And this program funds specifically investigator-led research through Canadian academic institutions. And it's funding for a maximum of 2 years. We do have, this program is well described on our website, dairynutrition.ca. So everybody could go onto that website to see what the process is in terms of funding, the deadlines, and of course the research priorities that are outlined for the program. Basically, the main goals of the program are to fund research that has nutritional and health implications for Canadian dairy products and is relevant to Canadian dairy farmers, that brings innovative and competitive dairy products with health benefits to the market, and features or has implications for dairy products as a whole or in their entirety, demonstrate technological innovation, and uses a multidisciplinary approach whenever possible to address fundamental and applied research questions. And in terms of our interests, we have a specific interest in applied human randomized controlled trials and in vivo mechanistic studies. In 2010, a unique opportunity was presented to us through the Canadian Agriscience Clusters Initiative, which was an initiative under the Growing Canadian Agri-Innovations Program, part of the Growing Forward Agricultural Policy Framework, which I believe the next speaker will be discussing in more detail. But basically, this was a very unique opportunity to partner with the government, specifically Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. And the goal of this initiative was to enable key industry-led agricultural organizations to mobilize a critical mass of scientific and technical resources to support innovative strategies for enhanced profitability and competitiveness. The initial support for this program was 3 years, starting in 2010 till 2013, with a possibility of renewal. And this was to provide funding from the government in a 3-to-1 ratio basis. So for every dollar industry invested, AFC or the government would provide $3. And as you can see, the money was quite substantial. We were able to successfully apply for this funding, and we were granted about $12 million over 3 years to fund research in the areas of human nutrition and health and sustainable milk or dairy production. So as you can see, the larger chunk of the money was coming from Agriculture Agri-Food Canada, contribution from dairy farmers, the Canadian Dairy Commission, and a contribution from NSERC as well. So in terms of the nutrition and health theme of this program, the total budget was about $12 million per year, and we were able to carry out 35 projects under 3 priority areas that were identified and established with the assistance of our independent scientific advisory board. The 3 priority areas were cardiovascular health, healthy weight and body composition, optimal nutrition development, and maintenance. And as I mentioned, this program was over 3 years. And this is the impact that the program had. With $12 million invested, we reached a large number of, a network of scientists were involved, many students and research professionals, and 48 projects in total targeting dairy production and human nutrition related topics. We've had some very interesting projects that we were able to conduct under this funding program and our other funding programs as well. I'm just highlighting some of the, just 3 due to time constraints. So I'm just highlighting 3 of the types of projects that we've been able to fund through this initiative and through our other means. One of them was looking at sodium reduction in cheese. This was a project that was led by the University of Laval, and specifically it was to assess the feasibility of reducing sodium in a variety of cheeses to the level that Health Canada had set out with the sodium targets. And we found that this was a very, this project provided a lot of very important information that has been communicated to dairy processors and has been useful to them in that regard regarding the sodium reduction strategy and to Health Canada as well. Another area that has been able to be funded under this program is with respect to vitamin D fortification in milk products. As most of us are all aware, the DRIs for vitamin D were recently changed, and we felt it was important to undertake research to look at feasibility of fortifying vitamin D across a variety of milk products and the impact that might have. And 2 studies have been very instrumental in providing some important data. These are studies carried out at the University of Toronto. And another area that we have seen that's very important to us, and we had noticed some research gaps, is related to the role of dairy products and dairy food in relation to bone health outcomes across different age groups, including bone mineral density and fractures. And we've been able to fund a study using the Canadian multi-centered study for osteoporosis, or the CAMO study, which is a very unique study in North America that's looking at bone health outcomes in various age groups. And in this project, we really have the first nationally comprehensive data, Canadian data, related to dairy and bone health. So we've been very fortunate that we have obtained a renewal of funding under the dairy research, under the Canadian Agriscience Cluster Initiative, with a second phase, Dairy Research Cluster 2. So we were successful in obtaining funding, thank you to AFC, over the next 5 years, starting in 2013 to 2018, with a larger budget over 5 years. And as you can see, this has a lot of impact. It impacts many Canadian scientists from 15 universities across Canada, 8 national research centers and partners, 65 graduate students and postdoctoral fellows involved in these research under this program. Again, the themes or the areas covered under this program include human nutrition and health, sustainable milk production, dairy genetics and genomics. The focus this time was more on programs of research. So we were able to undertake some programs which allows for a more collaborative and concerted effort to address some important questions that were and priority areas that were identified. So I'll just be focusing more on the human nutrition and health, of course. So these were the priority areas that were established in partnership with our scientific advisory committee, for which we sought applications from Canadian academic institutions. So the areas were cardiovascular health, metabolic health, healthy weight and body composition, optimal nutrition and function, and sustainability. And under this, we were able to successfully fund 7 programs or projects or projects of research, and these are the topics that have been funded. Dairy fat and cardiovascular health, which is a growing area of interest, milk products, and the impact of novel milk products on satiety and metabolic control, the role of dairy in the risk of type 2 diabetes in vulnerable populations, using a novel biomarkers-based approach, effects of milk and fermented dairy on intestinal and adipose tissue, inflammation, and obesity-linked cardiometabolic diseases. Another study looking at association between dietary intakes in general, including dairy products, but it'll provide all kinds of information on other food groups as well, and cardiovascular risk of Canadians, making use of the Canadian Health Measures Survey. And the role of high dairy, I guess, on bone health outcomes in pregnant women and their offspring. And a study looking at the role of dairy on bone health in youth and their families. And so we're very excited to have these programs funded under this program, this initiative, I should say, because I think they'll provide some very important Canadian data that will have important implications for public policy, clinical practice guidelines, and with some of the studies may provide some scientific substantiation towards potentially health claims related to satiety, postprandial glycemia, and bone health outcomes. For this initiative, we've always tried to do a lot of knowledge transfer, and as much as we could, but in this Cluster 2 initiative, we had identified that knowledge and technology transfer were a very key component, and we developed a specific sort of strategy just for that aspect. So we have a very specific plan for KTT in place to focus on the 23 programs or projects of research, and they're managed by someone in particular, some individuals that have a specific role just to look at this area and try to establish a coordinated effort where feasible and possible. And this is just some examples of the knowledge transfer activities. We have established a website called dairyresearch.ca where we have updates on some of the research projects, including description and lay summaries of the projects, presentations at conferences, including last year there was a few of projects presented that had been funded under Cluster 1. And we also have a website that has information for health professionals where we have summarized some of the research that has come out of this program or this initiative. So in terms of, again, presenting some opportunities and challenges, as you were able to see or appreciate some of the opportunities include having access to a larger pool of funds to be able to carry out more complex and longer-term projects and programs, the bringing together of networks of best scientific knowledge in research centers and academia, the ability to capacity building, of course, and training of highly qualified personnel, and just the whole concerted effort that makes it more efficient to answer or address some important questions. Of course, you can appreciate with such a big sort of initiative what the challenges would be. For us, in terms of our experience with, say, Cluster 1, we know that there's been some administrative issues related to documentation and just the timing of the research and funding cycles not always being compatible, trying to play catch-up with knowledge translation and transfer, which we hope we've largely addressed in the second phase, or we hope we will. And of course, it requires more effort. I put here on the part of PI, but I realize it's really more effort on everybody's part, including our part. We do have a specific team in place, a scientific coordinator that oversees all the logistical aspects. You could appreciate there's going to be a lot of dealing and liaising between the researchers, the academic institutions, and to liaise with the government at the same time. So a lot of collaboration is required. But in conclusion, despite these challenges, we feel that these kind of partnerships, such as the Canadian Agriscience Cluster Initiative, present a unique opportunity to drive the Food for Health agenda forward. From our experience, they're definitely possible and they're definitely ideal. Thank you.